Good afternoon and welcome to this podcast, which is about surviving divorce and separation. My name is Maura Mckibbin. I'm a family mediator. I spend my days helping couples who have made the very tough decision to separate to work through life reorganisation and family reorganisation without having to go to court. So I'm involved in problem solving with separated families to plan their future. And my co-presenter this afternoon is Lindsay. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Maura. Hi, I'm Lindsay George. I'm an experienced counsellor and psychotherapist, and I work with young people, couples, adults and families, and often work alongside Maura in relation to shuttle mediation. I deal mostly with clients on an individual basis, but obviously couple work is incredibly important, and obviously we're working today to talk about couples in specific separation and divorce, so I'm pleased to be here.
Thanks, Lindsay. And we thought this afternoon that one very important topic to share with everyone who's listening is a reflection on family life when people are separating in the COVID, in the situation we have with our current lockdown and our health crisis, because it is bringing enormous challenges to many, many families, to parents, to children, and those parents are reaching out to mediators, to family therapists for help and support during this time. So Lindsay and I wanted to focus on that specifically today and to run through a number of tips and share ideas and thoughts with you, which we hope will be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think this has been particularly stressful for most people, but when you're in a relationship and the relationship is broken down and you find yourself in under the same roof as your estranged partner, I think that the problem is it can be very, very difficult for couples to actually find a way of coping. So I'm hoping today that we can offer some really practical tips for couples and families to be able to adopt those things, because I guess when you're in this situation, it's very difficult to try and be civil and work through sort of communication with somebody that perhaps you're not in communication with anyway. So I guess the first possible tip would be about creating some rules or guidelines around how you're basically going to interact and function as a family or as a couple, and that can be something as practical as working out whether you're going to continue to cook and clean. Fundamentally, things like that are very, very practical, but they are super important because they can create lots of resentment around the person that's maybe not having those things done when they previously had them done for them. So I guess it's that type of thing. And also, do you spend time as a family? Do you continue to talk and sit around the dinner table and spend time as a family, or will you have separate time for meals? And do you then work out whether you're going to actually share the food shopping? So it's all of those sort of practical day-to-day domestic mundane things that perhaps maybe you're not thinking about first off, but it's really important to try and get a handle on that while you're obviously in this situation.
Yeah, as you say, incredibly practical stuff, but really worthwhile to think about it and make a plan. And one of the second things that we wanted to share by way of food for thought really is deciding what narrative, what story you are sharing with your friends and family about separation. And I think this applies anyway for couples who are separating, but particularly in the situation we find ourselves in lockdown at the moment. Because one of the things that we know is very important for children, well, there are lots of things that are important for children at a time of separation, but one of those is consistency of messaging. So I spend a lot of time with people who are trying to work through and create a parenting plan at the point of separation, to think out loud about what they're going to tell their children and when they're going to tell them, and how they're going to support them beyond that. But I think this messaging and consistency of messaging goes beyond the immediate family circle to friends and family, because particularly at the moment, people aren't necessarily seeing friends and family, but children are still in touch with grandparents remotely, or aunts and uncles, or family friends. And if a decision is taken by parents to end their relationship, a firm decision is taken, and they've made a decision, they're going to tell their children about that decision and start to prepare them for the changes ahead. It's very confusing for children if they're told one thing by their parents and actually something else by their grandmother or their grandpa or their aunt. And so it's really worth bearing in mind a conversation to do some planning around this as parents, and think about how limited a message are you sharing with family and friends, or are there some things you might be sharing individually with your family and friends that you really want them to be private about, so that children don't get to hear it. So it does take some planning and some forward thinking, actually, and it's an important thing for separating families to bear in mind.
Yeah, and I guess leading on from that is the need for space, because I think when you've got two estranged people living under the same roof, there is going to be this discourse in relation to the actual process of separation, and that you've got one person perhaps in a different space to the other, and that actually that one person that may not want to communicate and may not want to address their estranged spouse because that's their way of coping. If you're the person that's wanting to talk and try and work through some of this process and get answers and solutions and perhaps plan, it's really hard for that person to be rebuffed constantly if they're not getting what they need in relation to that communication. So I guess creating some space, and obviously trying to find other avenues in relation to support, so that people can find those areas where they can vent and they can work through their own feelings. Like, for instance, obviously a counsellor is the ideal place to be able to start that process, but you may well have a trusted family member that you can speak with, that you feel that is more neutral and sort of perhaps less can be more objective, and hopefully get some support that way. I think this is probably one of the most difficult things in this whole process of the limbo stage of divorce and separation, because two people are never at the same stage at the same time, and this is where you really do need some support.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Lindsay, and I suppose it leads neatly into the point I was going to make next, which is actually about, well, aside from space and being clear with each other about what space you need, how you're going to achieve that, is also the opposite of that, which is how much are you going to try as a family to have any family time together. And that's, I think, all about what feels emotionally manageable for parents. And it does take some thinking about and where you can, some talking about and being clear with each other about how you feel about this, because the point you make, Lindsay, is vital, really. It's always really necessary to recognise that people are never going to be, or very rarely going to be, in exactly the same emotional place around the separation journey. And one person might have started their repair work at some time ago, and then the other one is following on. And creating time for families, so particularly when people are still trying to share living space together, in an ideal world, if it can be achieved, it's a nice idea for parents to be able to still watch a film together or have a meal together with everybody. But the reality is that both parents need to feel that they can manage that. And so this does take some thinking about and working out for each person, and respecting where each person is in their emotional recovery journey. Because if one person's saying, I don't think I can manage that, I don't think I can deal with that, or if there's any possibility that trying to create that family time could spark conflict in a home that children might see or might hear, then you have to tread very carefully about that. So I think it's about testing out with each other and understanding where each other is, to find out what feels manageable. I don't know if you agree with that, Lindsay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. I think it's incredibly difficult when you're living with people, especially when the relationship is going well, to be around somebody 24/7. In lockdown, it's intensified tenfold, and clearly creating space is important, but there's also a whole raft of other issues in relation to, okay, if this isn't feeling okay and that you've agreed that you are going to spend some time doing the family stuff to try and create a transition, but it's not feeling okay, and there is some tension and there is some kind of in awkwardness, then it's okay to change your mind on that. And I guess trying to divide then your time with the children, if you have children, and when you're not with them or on duty, as we would say, that you take yourself away and you find a space for you to spend time on yourself and take yourself away from that. So it gives, again, space to your estranged partner to spend quality time with your child or your children, where you're not in the same room. And I just think that's incredibly important, because it creates a little bit of distance and respect, and also it means that when you're then on duty with the child or the children, that your partner, your estranged partner, can do the same. And these are really strong, healthy boundaries that we're setting here, because it sends a good message to not only, you know, respected partners, but also to the children, that mum and dad still respect each other.
Yeah, and I like the terminology of a non-duty parent and an off-duty parent. I think it really can help parents to appreciate the nuances in this new style of separated parenting that they're taking on board, and this, as you say, this idea that actually respecting when one parent's on duty, that's their time, and your time to step back and have your time out, or, you know, go off and do your exercise or whatever it is in the lockdown period we're in. So this idea of almost starting to practice or put into place an idea of separated parenting, but you're still under one roof, and that, you know, is remaining the case for the foreseeable number of weeks anyway, I think. One of the other challenges that crops up for parents who have separated, and this is a hugely sensitive issue around new relationships, and it's something, if you're, I'm sure, Lindsay, when you're working with separated couples, it's something that can crop up at any point in time, because for some people a new relationship has triggered the end of the marriage or relationship. Sometimes a new relationship starts fairly soon after separation. Sometimes it's a little bit later. But actually, if you're parenting, planning and mediation with separated parents, you are flagging this up with them. I'm often talking to parents, even if new relationships aren't on the cards, to ask people to think about the what ifs, you know, because at some point one or other or both of those parents are likely to be statistically in a new relationship. And so thinking about the impact of a new relationship. So I think particularly at the moment, we need to be highlighting for parents the potential for aggravation or conflict that this can cause if it's not handled with enormous sensitivity and respect. Again, we come back to this word of, you know, parental respect for each other. So where one parent or both parents might have entered into new relationships, but they're still living under one roof, thinking about the boundaries for that, the emotional boundaries that might be helpful to the smooth running of a household in a lockdown situation, or still under one roof when really people might rather not be, parents might rather not be. And thinking about the discretion that you apply with a new relationship. So, you know, I mean, I've had mediations where it's caused enormous upset for one person to be receiving lots of text messages with an alert on them, which seem obviously to be from a new partner. You know, thinking about the impact of that on the other person, and thinking about how you can manage that in a way that's more discreet, to help. It's all about the smooth running of a family, isn't it, in the separated family in these circumstances, and thinking about what has the potential to cause aggravation or upset to the other parent. And if you're still trying to share your living space, how can you avoid doing that? You know, how can you make the arrangements such that you're not going to unnecessarily upset or aggravate the other parent at a time when you're trying to create a family harmony in a separated situation. So that's something else that occurs to me, just to alert parents to think about when they're locked down and sharing space together.
Yeah, and I guess in relation to this, it's also the impact on what the children essentially are picking up, and they are always gathering clues from their parents anyway, because obviously they're emotional sponges, aren't they? And so with regard to that, I guess it's about, again, being thoughtful around the impact of your children, and then therefore, sending out very clear messages that the children are still loved, still cared for, that in their lives their security is that they still have two loving parents, and that not one parent is not going to abandon them, or both parents. I guess this is the other bit, isn't it? Is it be really careful about what messages you're sending out to your children. And so because things that they're going to want to know is, how is it going to impact them? Where am I going to live? Am I going to have to change school? Can I still see my friends? It's always about the children in relation to who's doing what and how does that impact me. And they want to obviously try and keep continuity, because that will be paramount to their security. So they still want two parents that they love the same. That hasn't changed. And it's reassuring your children, obviously, in relation to this, how much information you tell them and at what stage. Because if you haven't got the answers, you don't know where you're going to move, or how you're going to have to sell that house. It's likely that the child is going to have to change school. But if you haven't got the answers, then perhaps not communicating too much information, and to be able to allow your children to feel more in control of the situation, which is nothing's changed. As of today, we are still living in this house. Nothing has changed. We're co-parenting, and that mummy and daddy still love you very much.
Yeah.
And even though we're separating, it doesn't mean that anything's changed in relation to how we feel about you, because children will always think, how is this impacting me, and have I done something wrong? So I guess it's reassuring your children, not only in the way that you conduct yourself as parents, but also in the way that you communicate whatever messages that you're trying to get across.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. This ensuring that you are, it depends on the age and stage and emotional maturity of the children, doesn't it? What you share and when, and how much detail you talk, you use and give to them. But it's this very delicate balance that parents are, they're really trying to balance the idea of giving children enough information, so that, particularly as I think we are very aware, because we have a lot of feedback from children whose parents have separated, and we're very aware that children can be more aware than their parents think or believe or want to believe about what's going on at home. So where parents are alert to the fact that their children might know something about family separation, or something's changed, it's not often that they know precisely what it is, but they, you talk about sponges. I often talk with clients about osmosis, family osmosis, emotional osmosis, that children feel things sometimes before they hear them, before they see them. They sense the atmosphere. They know their parents really well, don't they? And allowing parents to work out, if they don't have all of the answers, do they have information they still want to give their children, alongside stacks and stacks of reassurance, which children need, as you say, about still being loved, and love for children never changes. The love that parents have for their children never changes. So it's really thinking very carefully about all of these issues for parents, because I think they worry a lot about, or they can hold back from talking to children when maybe the children do need some information, because they're worried they don't have all the answers. And I'm often saying to parents, you don't need all the answers in order to talk to your children, but you do need to know what you're going to say, and you need to be consistent about it. So plan what you're going to say, and when you're next going to talk to them. But these are things that lots of parents are grappling with, and trying to work out for their particular family what's going to be the best route forward for them. and families can be very stuck in limbo, can't they, for a long time. So this, it's working out. At the moment, I think people are feeling, a lot of people aware that we're locked down in houses, but then beyond that, if we are facing an economic crash, which is what we seem to be, we're being told that there are hard economic times ahead, and that too can hold people in the same living space. Beyond even a sort of physical health lockdown, there can be an economic factor that means that people can't quite get to afford separation when they would like to achieve their physical separation. But again, it's about balance, about this, being stuck in a limbo for a separated family without knowing when that will end or how things will be resolved is incredibly stressful for people, whether or not they've got children, but for parents who are also managing their parental relationship. This idea of being in limbo and trying to work hard to make a plan so that limbo doesn't go on for too long and really take its toll too heavily on a family in separation.
Let's be honest, yes, this is probably one of the most emotionally challenging periods, isn't it, in the divorce process? And I know you have clients that you work with to help guide them through this process in relation to how they can have a healthy separation, if there is such a thing. And I guess it is about creating support and creating essentially a place for your clients and my clients to be able to come and basically work with professionals like ourselves through this really difficult process, which is clearly even more emotionally challenging in the current COVID lockdown.
And it's often about support for communication, because talking is really hard when you're going through separation, and having support to make sure you can talk well and make plans for your separated family unit, financially, parentally, personally. And we've covered today quite a lot of tips and suggestions, and shared thoughts with you about what has the potential to help in a lockdown situation and things to look out for, really. And one of the things that we're going to go on to talk about next time is planning for the future. And that really is about how do we as professionals support and help you to do that planning. How can we support and help you to be able to talk to each other, be able to hear each other well, so that you can make your plan for your separated family going forward. And that was really, I think, Lindsay, wasn't it, the topic for next time?
For next time, yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard to imagine what the future looks like at the moment. I guess for all of us, in this very difficult period of time that we're in, I think the social distance easing isn't happening particularly anytime soon by the looks of what they're saying on the news. So I guess it's just trying to have something to look forward to hope for in the future that perhaps you can work towards once this is all over.
Yes. So thank you very, very much for listening to us. We hope that what we've shared today will be useful and helpful to you, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.